Attention, please. The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
You are now listening to Renewed Mind Revolution podcast with your host, Michelle Cook Hall. Please begin to take that good deep breath as we begin to refresh, recharge, and reset. Let's go. Welcome to Renewed Mind Revolution podcast with your host, Michelle Cook Hall. As always, it is my absolute honor and my pleasure to be able to come and share some tips and some tools with you that I know will help you and assist you in becoming a better you. That's what this podcast is all about. It's about reminding you that it is never too late to be great. It's never too late to start all over again. It is never too late to click that reset button. Once again, let me remind you that it doesn't matter how long you have made those mistakes. It does not matter how long you've been in that place. You have a right to start all over again. And you can. Not only do you have that right, let me emphasize, you do have a right, but you can. You can do it. It's something about people realizing and recognizing the ability to do something. A lot of times we limit ourselves, not other people limiting us, but we limit ourselves. We put ourselves in a box. We put ourselves in a place, okay, whether it is a good place or a bad place. We put ourselves in a place and we refuse to go out of that space, right? We become what is called contented, but not in a good way, in a very unhealthy way. We become contented where this is just enough. This will do, right? This is just fine right here, even though it could be chaotic, it could be unhealthy, it could be toxic. We still stay there in that place because it's familiar. We've talked about this before. If you have an opportunity, go back and listen to some of the other previous podcasts because we definitely talk about when you are in a place that you know is toxic and unhealthy, but you stay there because it's familiar to you. The danger of that, the danger of being in a toxic environment, but yet staying there because it's familiar. But it happens more than you probably would know. It happens because it becomes like a mindset, right? Just used to it. And sometimes people will choose what is familiar versus what is good. They will always choose what is familiar versus what is healthy, right? What is productive, their freedom, right? In their minds, they're just in this place and they're afraid. It's amazing how powerful fear can be because sometimes people can have the out, that is their freedom, but fear of change can keep them in a place. So this is what this podcast is about, reminding you that you can be great, that you can start over again, that you don't have to stay in a place that is toxic. You don't have to stay in an unhealthy place, that you do deserve, and that you can start all over again, and that you can be free from where you are right now. So that's what we're talking about during this podcast. Please remember to support this podcast. Remember to share this podcast. Remember that you can follow us on different social media outlets such as Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And I will be looking forward to communicating and connecting with you on those different social media platforms. So leave me a message if you're listening through Podbean. Please leave a message, and I do respond to those who leave messages on there as well. Listen, today for me, as I'm taping this, is a beautiful Saturday afternoon. I don't really get an opportunity to do these podcasts on Saturdays, but I really want to make sure that I had an opportunity to share with you guys before this week was completely gone. So I said, I can't make the week, but let's see if we can touch bases on this weekend. There has been a lot going on in our worlds still. For those who are listening to this podcast at this particular time, we're talking about in our news a different variant of COVID-19. They call it Delta. And then I'm sure there are other variants that will come about, because that's what can happen, right? That these viruses can continue to mutate and they can continue to change, right? So now we're seeing that once the states and countries opened up, now they're bringing back restrictions again, and because of the spread of this new variant, and so it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to take in, but it's definitely different than what we was experiencing last year around this time, but it is a lot to take in. So I just really want to check in and touch bases with you guys regarding, the changes that we are going through as a community. I think that's what's really significant. And I think I emphasized that even last year when we were going through these changes, is that normally, the changes and the challenges are like, just this one community, just this one area, just this one country, just this one state, just this one city, just this one town. But to have something that has directly impacted the complete world, it's mind blowing, right? Absolutely mind blowing. But what's great about it is that we are all able to support each other together doing this, because it's something that is affecting the entire community. So you're not like one country looking at another country and just saying, oh, oh my goodness, I'm praying for them, and I wish them well. No, we are all impacted, and we all need prayer, and we all need the support and the love during this particular time. So I definitely want to talk about that a little bit before we get into our topic on today. I wanted to, emphasize the fact that we do need one another. We do need to make sure that we are supporting one another and that we're praying for one another. Take a time and, check in on your friend, check in on that family member, check in on that person that you haven't heard from in a while. Just, send a message, send a text message and just say, I'm thinking about you, I'm praying for you, you crossed my mind. I will do that often. And when someone crosses my mind, I don't have to get into detail about anything with them. It's just a quick message of, you were on my mind while I was thinking about you. How are you? And you'd be amazed how impactful that is for people, especially if they are suffering in silence. Okay? Suffering in silence. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Suffering in silence. Suffering in silence. We're going to talk just briefly about that. There is not necessarily signs. There is not flashing lights or billboards that will announce if someone is suffering in silence, okay? And we have lost so many people. Because they are suffering in silence, right? And a lot of times people suffer in silence because there's such a stigmatism to needing help and asking. Hear me again. There's a stigmatism to needing help and asking for it. We've talked about this before, because it really hurts my heart when people feel as if they are going to be perceived as being weak. They're going to be perceived as being weak if they need help. Okay? That's the biggest lie I've ever heard in my life. It takes a strong individual to recognize that they need help and say something. That takes strength. If we can change that stigmatism, if we can change that mindset, if we can change that perception, of thinking that it takes a weak person to open their mouth and say, I need help. I mean, we would probably save so many lives. It is so important for you to hear me say that it takes a strong, courageous, wise individual to open their mouth and say, I need help. You are not helping yourself if you are hiding your pain, if you're suppressing your pain. Because I have taught this over and over again that it will come out in some other way, and it's never in a healthy way. Your pain, your anger, your frustration, your bitterness, your depression, your anxiety, it's going to all come out in some way or the other every time. And it's never in a healthy or productive way. So it is so important that we understand that it takes strength, it takes courage to open your mouth and say something, to say something. A lot of times people feel not only that they will be perceived as weak, but if we talk about the community, the faith community, a lot of times people feel as if they will be perceived as having, or excuse me, lacking faith. You know, guys, I have talked about this before, and I mean, I could write a book on that, right? The perception of an individual who seeks help. Now, we're not talking physical, we're talking mental or emotional. If they open their mouth and say, I need help, they feel in the faith community that they will be perceived as lacking faith, lacking faith. And so that too is a hindrance for them, and that too keeps them from reaching out and seeking the help that they need. Okay? It keeps them from making a very courageous and smart move because they're afraid of what other people will think about them. And the problem, the major problem with that in the faith community is that you see people struggle, right? I mean, you can see it. They're struggling, and then you will see them crash, right? They will crash. And so it's important that in the faith community that we teach individuals as well as those outside of the faith community that when you need help, when you are struggling, when you are facing a giant, you need to open your mouth and tell someone and seek the help that you need. And we know there are so many resources out there, that you can receive. Individuals, let me just say this: if you're in the faith community, you only feel comfortable in the faith community, then there are clinicians, therapists, there are Christian therapists. Okay, there are centers for that, that specifically have individuals who will deal with individuals who are from the faith community. Pastors, they have in ministries where they have counseling. They have grief counselors. They have people who are having, issues with their marriage, so a lot of churches will offer that as well. If your local church does not offer these services, don't say, well, I guess it's just not going to happen. Don't say that to yourself. Like, go beyond your local community. If your local community is not giving you the resources that you need, then you need to go beyond your local community and receive the help that you need. Go outside and begin to do your research, begin to look and find. I look at it like this is what I look at it like. When I was looking for a physician, for my child, or even for myself, but especially when my first baby was young, and he had some issues, some things that we had to look into when he was a newborn. So what I did was I made sure that I looked and I go and review what other people have said about the physician, and I look at their credibility with the community, and I compare notes to determine who is best for me and my child, right, and my family. What's best to fit this particular situation? Well, it's the same thing when it comes to you receiving your help. Right? You're gonna go and you're gonna, look, and you're gonna do your research, and you're gonna see who is best to fit my situation. Right? So, like I stated, even if you are from the faith community, if you're more comfortable, if you are, then you're going to do your research and find someone that will be best for your situation. If you're not from the faith community and you're open, you might have preferences, right? People who specifically deal with this or specifically deal with that. And those are the people that you're going to look at, and you're going to compare, and you're going to, do your research, and you're going to reach out. My point is, I don't want you to live in pain. I don't want you to suffer in silence. I want you to be bold and courageous enough to do the research, to make some phone calls, to send some emails, to look around and ask someone, can they refer you someone? You can go to your physician, and physicians also can provide you with a list, of individuals that they refer people to. So I'm just trying to give you a step one, because a lot of times people don't know, where do I even start? I want to do this, but I'm afraid to do this. How do I even start? Some people are not comfortable, right? Because once again, it has a stigmatism to it. So you might, can start off, talking to someone via Zoom or on the phone, whatever it is to get you started. Get started. My point is, because I see that we are starting again with this second round of COVID-19 with the different variants and going back to lockdown and all these different things that is in the air, I want to make sure that you are taking care of the whole person, right? So this is a concern for you right now, to an unhealthy level, right? You know that you're feeling closed in. You know that you're feeling uncomfortable. You know that you're feeling edgy. You know that you're feeling very anxious, and this is not natural for you. This is not normal for you. This is behavior that you're not used to experiencing, right? Then what you're going to do is you're going to reach out, and you're going to take care of that part before it gets to a point that is beyond control, beyond help. There is no benefit to anybody in any community to suffer in silence. We don't want to lose anyone else, young or old, to suicide. Okay? We don't want to lose anyone else to these things, these levels of depression and these levels of anxiety that we're seeing. We don't want to lose anybody else. We want to remind you that you can make it. We want to remind you that you were created to be great, that you were created for a purpose and for a reason. That's not an accident that you're here. We want to remind you that regardless of what your upbringing was, what your mama said, what your father said, what your grandma said, what your auntie said, regardless of what they have said to you in a bad way, telling you that you were accident, telling you that you're worth nothing, telling you that you will never be anything, regardless of what they say, they don't have the final say. Okay? You are here because you're supposed to be here. Even though it's pain that you might be feeling today, even though you feel as if it has been too much for too long. Come on, somebody, that is like the best statement of the day, right? Too much for too long. Because somebody is feeling that. Somebody is going through that right now. Someone has said it's too much for too long. And I relate, and I understand that. And because I can relate, and because I can understand that with confidence, I can tell you that even in the midst of that, you still have purpose. You still have a reason to continue to get up, to continue to face your challenges, and to be a part of the world, be a part of our society, and be a productive part. Do your part. Do your part in your healing. Do your part. And we talked about this before in a previous podcast, but because I want you to remember that you are a part of your own healing. We wait for everybody to come and rescue us and give us these words of encouragement and give us these words of empowerment. But if they never, ever, ever come, be a part of your own healing. And the first step you can do in this type of situation is get up from where you are and begin to reach out, and do not sit there in silence. Do not suffer in silence. Do not suffer in silence. One thing that I have noticed is that when people have made so many mistakes, and this is one of the reasons why I do this podcast, when people have made so many mistakes, they almost feel like whatever cards they are dealt, they deserve those cards, and they're going to deal with that. Like, I made my bed, I'm going to lie in it. No matter how uncomfortable, nasty, filthy it is, I'm going to lie in it. So I want to get you out of the mindset of thinking that, okay, yeah, you made mistakes, but you don't have to suffer for the remainder of your life, from your mistakes. You made bad connections. You made poor choices. You have been an addict. You were a thief. You taken someone's life, and you feel like this is it. I whatever bed I made, I went from the lowest to the extreme. I know, but no matter, you might be thinking, whatever, all these choices that I made in my life, I deserve to be right here. Wherever the suffering, the punishment is, I'm going to stay right here in that. And I'm here to tell you that as long as you know that you made these mistakes and you made these poor choices, and that you recognize that they're not okay and they're not good, and you have a heart that is that wants to be forgiven, a heart that is actually sorry for what you have done, understanding that when you have the ability to recognize that these are bad choices and bad mistakes. And I'm not like boasting, because I've seen people who made poor choices, but they boast about it. Have you ever heard someone and they did all these things when they were young, and it's like, yeah, we were something else. We did that. I went through all the ladies. I went through all the guys. I did all the drugs. I drink them all on the bus. I mean, they kind of bragged about the choices that they made, and even though now they supposed to regret. They're saying that they regret it because it put them in the situation. When they begin to talk, they sound as if they're boasting. We're not talking about that. We're talking about you today who feel as if those choices that I made, it wasn't worth it. It was bad, and because of that, I'm struggling now with this, or I'm struggling with that, or my children are struggling, or my family is struggling based upon the choices that I've made. If you're there, you have remorse for what you've done, right? You have a heart that is, saying, I am remorseful and I'm not boasting. Then that's the first step. You know that you made, poor choices, and you know that it shouldn't have happened. So then you need to understand it. If you recognize that, and not boasting, but you recognize that you made poor choices and that you should have done things differently, then understand that you are living under a grace, right? Under a grace period, which means now you can say, thank you, God, for your mercy. Thank you, God, for your grace. Now I can move forward. I ask you for forgiveness for these things that I've done, no matter how heinous they are. People might not forgive you. They might not forgive you for abandoning them. They might not forgive you for leaving them and hurting them and stealing from them and everything else you've done, right? But if you have asked for forgiveness, you said to the people, I'm sorry. I was in a bad place. I made poor choices. You ask for forgiveness. You ask for forgiveness. Even if they choose not to forgive you, that does not hold you hostage where you are. It holds them hostage, but it doesn't hold you hostage. It only holds you hostage if you say, that they're right. I deserve nothing. I deserve nothing. But the truth is, you do deserve a second chance, because we all make horrible decisions. I know some are more extreme than others. Some a little bit, where you go, oh my God, can you really forgive that? Well, we don't always forgive people, but God forgives. God forgives. And so, since He is the one who is able to transform lives, and He is the one who's able to bring us through, and He is the one who is able to give much grace and much mercy, that's the one whom we are relying, depending on to get us through these times. So, although those around you might not give you grace, they might not give you mercy, they might not give you forgiveness, they might say, no, there's nowhere in the world I'm forgiving you for what you've done. You ruined our family, you ruined my life, or you've ruined your own, and I hate to watch you do it. Whatever the situation is, you don't have to stay there. You do your part by asking for forgiveness, showing that you have changed and that you want forgiveness, and then begin to move on. You don't suffer. You don't tell yourself, I made this bed, I'm going to lie in it. My mistakes that I've made, I am forever bound by them. I'm forever chained to them. We talked about that too before in a previous podcast, being chained to your pain. You don't have to forever be chained to your mistakes and chained to your pain. So the only way that we can start the healing process is recognizing what we've done, um, and the people that we've hurt. If we've hurt people, even if it's ourselves, I'm sorry, that I made those mistakes to myself. But recognizing it and beginning the healing process by saying, I'm not going to stay here. I will do more damage to those around me and myself if I stay here in this place of brokenness. Brokenness. You can't, a lot of times, I'm sure you heard when you say you can't tell them, but you can show them. So I can show you better than I can tell you that I'm healing, that God's grace is on my life, that God loves me. I can show you better than I can tell you that I'm coming out of this place, that I do want more for my life. I do want more for my family and my children. And you can show them better than you can tell them. Sometimes we talk and talk and talk, and people will not get it. They do not understand where you're coming from, and that's fine. But get up from where you are and show. Show that you changed. Show that you're sorry. We say it, but your actions must follow. So show it by getting up from that place where you are, that place of brokenness, that place of pain, that place of grief, that place of hurt, and break those chains of pain. Break it, the chains of pain. And no longer choose. Today is the day that I no longer suffer in silence. Today is the day I no longer suffer in silence. What a great testimony will come from that strength of coming from a place of brokenness to a place of healing. And then you become a healer yourself. Once you get your healing, you can become a healer yourself. Begin to share your testimony with other people about how you suffered in silence and you thought that that's where you were supposed to stay and where you were supposed to be. But God's grace and God's mercy brought you to a place of healing and restoration. And that's what I want for you on this beautiful, beautiful Saturday morning. Listen, you guys, I did not want to keep you long. I just want to share a little message with you of hope, love, and faith. This podcast is all about restoring and resetting. So I hope that you got something out of it. I love you guys, but most importantly, God loves you more. Please remember to try and click on that button to support this podcast. Reach out and let me know that you are enjoying this podcast. And remember to share this podcast. You have been listening to Renew My Revolution podcast with your host, Michelle Kakal. God bless you guys. I love you, but most importantly, God loves you more.